do it correctly. Okay, seems that we are live. Okay, so let's start with the presentation of the community, and then I will continue as I suppose. So first of all, thank you very much to all the people that will join us. I will introduce who we are basically and what we are doing. Many of you may know who we are and what we are doing, but for the ones that are coming for the first time, I would say is interesting to explain a little bit what we are doing. So basically, we are a non-profit organization and an open group where many people are coming just to learn things about technology, and we are basically curious about it. And we've been doing a lot of events in those difficult days, also just having a look on different technologies and products and etc. Almost related with Java, but not only with Java. And I guess that many of you have been arrived thanks to Meetup, but we have also our Twitter account, and we have also Slack channel. And I invite you directly to join us because many things are happening there and many people are sharing things. And also we have the website of our conference that we organize every year. So yeah, here we have some of the events that we're organizing for, I would say, for a long time and more that cannot fit in a single slide. And yeah, a big conference that we stay tuned because I think in really soon we are gonna share some news around it. So I will invite you to join us and talk about it. And yeah, I will just remember those beautiful days where we can attend really nice conference, and this one was really great. We are really proud of the results of this conference, and we love the result of the gathering all the people, and yes, a great team doing this work for you. And yeah, we have to say this time that we have to say thank you to our sponsors. The one Dynatrace is providing the Zoom connection, the other one JetBrains is giving us some free licenses. So ping us if you want one of the free licenses that JetBrains is giving us for us. And as we normally say, just join us, talk to us, and then we can see what we can do for the next session. That we can be completely up to you. So we have a lot of things in mind, but if you want to present something or you want to share something, probably a lightning talk, no more than 5 to 7 minutes will be much better. And it's not something really complicated for many of the people. And nothing more from my side. I don't want to steal more time from Max. And I have to say thank you very much, Max, for joining us and to be here from your home. And yeah, so Max is basically the creator of JBang. And yeah, I hope a really great presentation for what we can do for JBang. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me, Nacho?
Perfectly.
Yes. Okay. For some reason, it sounds like it says my mic is muted, but anyway, we'll go with that. So anyway, I'm Max Anderson, as Nacho said, and I'm here to talk about making Java fun to use again. And why do I say making Java fun to use again? Well, I actually did Java development for 18, 20 years. And I kind of stepped away from it from a few years ago. And I even took a year off to kind of look at things. And when I came back to work at Red Hat again on Caucus, I kind of saw Java as being surprisingly heavy and hard to get started with. So I had this idea, and that's what came up with JBang. So JBang is a project I started a year and a half ago over Christmas. And yeah, the best way I wanted to introduce it is just to kind of show you how it works. That's the easiest part. So here I have a directory that is empty. I have JBang installed that I can run. And I can do things like I'm a user that wants to create something. I'll just say hello init, hello to Java, and it creates a file here on disk. And when I say hello Java, it will just run. and I can give it arguments. So I can say hello Barcelona, and it prints out hello. Well, this one doesn't have arguments, but let's say I want to do one a bit more complicated. So we have a thing called templates. That's CLI templates. So let's call it hello CLI Java. And again, it's just single Java files on disk, nothing special. And I can just go, and this one also just says hello. Well, it builds a jar, says hello world. And now if I say Barcelona, it actually can take arguments. And there's even, you know, some help if I want to. And this code is just, you'll see that hello Java is just a main class with hello world, whereas the hello CLI is actually, if you know, Pico CLI is like a tool to do, you know, command line parsing, that kind of thing. Nothing specific with JBang. It's just that's what we use as a basic for the default template for CLI. And this is just Java code that you can run, and there's nothing to it. That's the beauty of JBang. There's like no extra build file or setup or nested directories and that kind of thing. You can just get starting. And that was actually the first thing that JBang did, was to just make Java something you can use as a scripting language. And of course, the first thing is go like, well, this is fine. You have Java code, is good. But how do I edit this thing? Like, how does an IDE understand this? And unfortunately, many IDEs out there assumes complexity. But so JBang kind of handles it for you. So you can say JBang edit open, and it's going to open up IDE. And in this case, it's VS Code. I could have said open Eclipse or IntelliJ or VS Code or VR Emacs. It will work the same way. As long as it just has support for Java, it kind of works. Or not kind of, it will work. And you see, this is a normal project. You have a source folder with the hello CLI in it. And I can edit it. So let me just put something here. I can get my keyboard to work. And I just say, let's put a space here and just take something. You see content assist for the libraries work. If I say command line, that's a version string here, just to have something. So I can navigate this code. I can see the types. I can content assist as I always wanted to do. And then if I go back and run this thing, I say take two, well, take two, it should print out the 4.50, which was the version string I just put in there. And you see, if I run it again, it doesn't build, it just prints the thing that's there. So what JBang does is just makes the whole interaction easier to do with Java. No setup, no nothing. So yeah, that's JBang in a nutshell. There's more to it. We'll get into it here, but that's the starting point. Getting started with Java much easier. And that's just, you know, kind of how whoops. I can't hide it. There we go. That's the way I see the world right now. Is there's a door that I know I can get in of, but there's some obstruction in front to get started with. And then there's this other world of the door is open. I can see things as light as green pastures. There might be someone I know out there. It's just easier to use. And the left side is how I see Java. At least I saw Java like a year or two ago. That was just, everyone knows there is like an industrial thing, but you know, it's not a pleasant state to be, especially if you want to get started or if you want to explore. It's just hard. Whereas in the other side of the door, you have stuff like Python or Node or Go. Those languages, their ecosystem there is just easy to get started with. Python has exploded now, mainly in AI and data center, where it's not about complexity, it's just being accessible and easy to use. Node.js, well, it's exploded too, And Go has too. And one of the reasons I claim is just that the complexity to get started is much, much lower for these languages. And I'm not talking about a language like the syntax. I'm talking about like set up and get going. So I want to brighten that left side and make it something that's easy to get going with. And I believe I have with JBang. So with Java, there's a few things you do. There's stuff you want to do, like learn and explore the language. You want to run things, you want to build things, and you want to package them. And I'll go through and show you how that works in Java and how JBang kind of have an alternative way of doing it without it not being Java. It's just taking a different, fresher approach. So here is hello world. This time it's not using the Pico CLI, but it's using another dependency. And this is the only thing you need. It's a file, and you can run this as much as you want. So here are the things that make JBang work. It adds a header, so you can run. You can say ./hello as because Bash and C shell will interpret this as a command to run. And then it says run in this current environment, run JBang, and give this file an argument plus the additional arguments. That's what this thing does. And then when it's done, return the exit code. That means all this stuff down here never gets triggered in the Bash. So if you see up here, the first class is Bash. To tell Bash, this is just a root file you just run. The two comments is so Java sees it as a comment, the two classes. And the third one is so when you're running on Windows, it won't interpret this as a UNC path. So there's a reason for all those three is there. And that's where the name JBang comes from, because normally you have a shebang here, and JBang is in like the JBang from this. Anyway, that's a very small trick that we use. It's also used in Go and other languages for that sense. Then the second line is the dependencies. So this is, again, a Java comment, but it's something that JBang will look for. So / steps we look for, and then we parse that as a dependency. So in this case, it come GitHub layers, the Figlet subversion, right? And then the rest is just normal Java. And those two instructions just lets JBang know that, hey, that the dependencies need to be fetched, and then compile and build this thing. And then, yeah, you just run it, and you'll see if you don't have a dependency on disk, it will say resolving and get the dependency and build the jar. In this case, it's printing out this ASCII art. And that's it. There's no extra build step, no extra setup of that sense. So where does this, why is this important for learning? Well, for me, just this here is just simple. I don't have to explain what a main build is. I don't have to explain an IDE. I don't have to do anything. Much easier to get going with. I can also take those dependencies and just replace them. Like there's no extra file I have to open or extra tooling I have to do. It's just there. So just to give an example of, if you take JBang the full way, what does that mean for a project? So what's on the screen now is a Gradle project with a wrapper. It has a README file, and then it has this nested directory with some Java code, which is actually code to extend kubectl. Kubectl is the tool for Kubernetes. It could also be a Git plugin or something else, but it's Java code for these things. And this is a typical project, small one. And of course, if you have even bigger, it becomes even worse. So, well, if you're using JBang, you don't need the build Gradle, you don't need the wrapper. You could have a JBang wrapper, but the point is you don't need to for that to get started. You also don't need the nested level of directories. Again, there's nothing against it, but why enforce that from the start? And beyond that, you can take those class files. In Java, we have a tendency to put any small class into a separate file. JBang works with multiple files, but you don't have to. And sometimes it even just makes it easier to deal with. So you could strip down, this could be a JBang product. This is basically what it would have to be. But we can even go a step further, and JBang supports the notion of, well, if it's a Java file, we will treat it as a Java file. But if you remove the Java file, which is required to run them as a kubectl extension, it will actually handle it for you. So this, on the left side, complexity is now replaced with a single file and called kubectl-example. And now that will work. So you can actually run kubectl example, in this case, pod list, and it'll print it out. So we went from, like, this is the end result, single file, get started, you write a utility, and you can start, using it in actual real place. Normally, you would have used Go or Bash or some other C native compiler code to do this. With JBang, you can just kind of fit Java into it without any extra overhead. So yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, if I'm just writing a utility, why would I have to deal with that complexity on the left when the only thing I need to do is get some dependencies and write a little bit of code? So that's for me, when I realized I could do this, that's kind of where JBang got born. And I kind of said, let's make this happen. So yeah, so again, many might have heard about JBang, and it's about scripting single files. That was the case in the early days, but you can have full-blown multi-file things. So here I have a class called myApp that refers to another class at the name, and it just works. There's no necessary setup. This works because Java-C actually supports multiple files, no problem. And then if you want to add stuff to the jar, like you want to have an HTML file or application properties or any other setting, you can just refer to it up here. And then you can also add additional Java files from anywhere online. And this means when you start doing this, JBang becomes a little bit more of a build tool, but we've been very careful. It's not a general purpose build tool. It's just enough to be able to use the broader ecosystem without having too much complexity. So yeah, we have dependencies, we have multiple files. We can run things without having to know there's a compiler behind it. And I showed in the beginning like how you do edit. And if you don't have, so JBang has this edit feature which will turn out on disk. Let me show you this thing. It sets up a virtual project that these files are in, so any IDE understands it. That's what the JBang edit command does. But what's really interesting is that if you're on a system that has no IDE, let's say you're getting started with Java, I don't know if you try to read the guides that try to explain how to use Eclipse or IntelliJ or VS Code. It actually gets quite a long in the tooth if you are a newbie. So we added to it, you can do JBang edit that says open, which means it will open the IDE, the default one you have. But if you don't have one, it'll actually install VS Codium. VS Codium is the free version of Visual Studio that has no ties to Microsoft. And that lets us to download it, install it, and have all the Java stuff set up for you, and it just works. So that means you can get started with Java on any machine out there if you just know the command to run JBang. So yeah, that's for me again, getting started and learning Java. There's nothing easier as far as I can see in this. So yeah, so with this, oh, 22% is using it. Good. I feel like I've made JBang Java a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to get started with. And you do the init, you create your app, you can run it, and you can add dependencies. And again, you don't have to set up a Gradle file or a main POM file to get started. Even if you have an IDE that does it, like it's unmatched how easy it is to do. And I'll keep saying it because everyone that said to me, no, I'm just going to use the IDE and it's all great. Okay, it's fine, but in the end, it turns out that many people, even though they think it's easy, they once they actually try and start using JBang, they go like, oh, all that mental overhead of open the IDE and it's just gone. You just find a dependency and start getting code, get coding.
That's great. That's great. So basically, we don't need the complexity of a big IDE, for just writing code that basically runs and works.
Yeah, so you can still use, I don't have it here, but you can still use Eclipse and IntelliJ with it. It's just you don't have to like create a project, find a POM XML and add a dependency, which is like, I don't know, a POM XML is like 6 lines of text, and Gradle, again, you have to find you have to plug in and add the extension. And the thing is, if you've done Java for 20 years, it's like your second nature. But what about those who are just starting?
Yep.
It should be a big thing. And I'll tell you, I'm a big Python head. I've done big projects in Python, and especially any automation, I tend to use Python or Bash. I didn't make JBang. I don't use Python and Bash anymore because I can do it faster in raw Java. Especially because all the other stuff is just gone. So,
we have at least two. Well, in fact, we have 2 questions. One is about Jordi asked about if JBang is able to handle multiple classes in a single file. It meant to top level classes, not inner.
No, well, so JBang is. I've been very cautious on JBang can't do anything Java can't. So I don't solve the problem of multiple top level classes. So there has to be one that's public, and then you can have others that are top level, but they have to be what's that called? Like I forgot what the scope is called, but default scope. So they're not public, but you can have them in there. Of course, there are some limitations because some frameworks doesn't work very well with them. But I can tell you, when I built JBang, and I'll get into a bit about my Caucus, I actually fixed a few things, or rather, I opened issues. So at least the stuff we do in Red Hat and JBoss has been fixed. Yeah, so no, I don't tweak Java in any way. So
okay, thank you.
That's the second. Okay, does it? Cool. So yeah, so now we got learning Java. Now, how do we run stuff in Java? And how do you pass arguments? So in Java, you can do Java XYZ Java. Like since Java 10, you can run single files. And that's good, but it doesn't handle dependencies. JShell, you have to, that's another way of running. You can't debug them, and you don't have any arguments. If you have a Java file, you go Java, that's Java. There's maybe an exec Java, there's maybe an JavaFX run, all different ways of launching things. All good, all powerful. This is stuff that's grown over the last 20 years. Like these they weren't there from day one. JBang has advantage it came late, so it can kind of unify things. So whether you want to run the Java file directly or use JBang to call Java or JShell or jar, JBang will do the right thing. All of them can pass parameters. And the one that's special is, for example, JShell, if you know, is this like a REPL thing for Java. It doesn't understand the notion of parameters. So here I actually made JBang a bit smarter so that JShell can do it. And again, just a curiosity that in Java, there's many ways of doing things, but they're not uniform. In JBang, I unified the ones to just make it easier to handle. Debugging, so you can't debug the XYZ Java directly call, you have to call JBang. So JBang -debug, then connect debugger, and you are debugging Java. And that's, again, once you realize with JBang, I can just add dependency to any library I know, write code for it, do any like scripting automation, and I can debug it with this command. And that, again, if you compare it to Java, that's like, I've got it now, but like agent and suspend, and there's like a whole screen full. Here is just, you run it and you can connect to debugger. So those are the basic stuff. But let's kind of launch off and do a bit more interesting things. And this came early on, like, well, if JBang knows about dependencies, why not just be able to run dependencies directly? So even if you don't like JBang's single file approach, you might like to use JBang just to run Java apps. So if you have a Maven dependency that has a manifest, main class manifest, you can run it. You just refer to the Maven dependencies, the Maven coordinates, and it'll go fetch it for you. I can run code from GitHub or actually any website out there. But for example, if you use Gist or GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, we have support for extracting the code and run it for you. And by the way, we won't run it directly. We will ask you first if you approve that source. But the idea is that you could create a Gist and just share it on Twitter or social media or an email to a colleague and just say, hey, run this thing. And you don't have to clone or download. JBang will do it for you. Carbon is another service that can highlight things. I had in the early days, I could run Twitter. So a Twitter tweet could be a runnable thing. That was more gimmick, but it was fun. But unfortunately, a few months ago, Twitter made it so you can't actually get the text of a tweet without being logged in. So I removed it because it was.
So this is amazing. Let me add here one point. So basically, not only you always get the let's say the dependency that it is always possible to download. Let's say so JBang is going to download this file and then used to be compiled and then also run it from your command line, right?
Yes, correctly. Right? So what I show here on the screen is what the full Gist is longer, right? But yeah. You just you have it. It means you can just copy the URL and share it or create. Yeah, exactly. So
cool. That's cool. Meanwhile, we have another question that one related with debugging. So Brett asked, is the debug we'll wait for the debugger attached before running or?
Yes. So the default setup I have is JBang does as debug will, I think it's like 4004. It has like a port and just wait. You can tell it to not wait, but the default is to wait.
Cool.
Because often again it's a small script, so why you won't be able to attach fast enough. But yeah.
Cool.
And mind you, by the way, I use that JBang debug from the command line, but since inside the IDE, it is an actual Java product, so I can also just run it from the IDE. So you don't have to use JBang debug. You can just use normal debug in IDE because it just is a Java project. Yeah. And another one we had recently, which is useful because sometimes you don't have the jar inside your Maven repository. You only have that as a jar on a website somewhere, or maybe it's a GitHub release archive. So you can just the way I try stuff out now is I don't download a jar and set it up. I just go JBang and then copy the link to the release jar, and then I can try things out. Okay, but even more. So now we can run things, but these lines are fairly long. So JBang has an alias mechanism. So this command here says, please JBang, I want to have an alias called CLI, and this refers to this Caucus CLI Maven artifact. And after this point, I can just go JBang CLI, and it'll run that for me, right? I can even I can just skip that whole step, and you can have in your GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket organization, you can have a repository called JBang catalog that has a JSON file that says, hey, CLI equals this thing. And then a user can just go JBang CLI Caucus IO, and we will fetch it for you and run it. So this means if you are an organization, you can have JBang scripts that will go and get the latest demo or application, and again, the user doesn't have to do anything. More crazy things I've been playing with to run is Minecraft. I won't go much into it, but if you run this, JBang Spawns is a Minecraft version or variation. It will launch a Minecraft app for it. And people are like, well, how special is that? But if you haven't tried, I have a kid who's 6 years old. He's now starting to try JBang, not JBang, Minecraft. And I was like, how hard can that be? That must be easy. But I was surprised how much instruction they had to give to people to install Java, run things, and set it up. And with JBang, it's just one command. So that's one thing for running. And yeah, for me, I feel this is like a massive improvement over normal Java. So I'm just kind of drop the mic on that. That's it. So the other part, build. This is the typical world of Java. There's Maven, Gradle, and Ant. There's also others like Bazel and SPT and whatever. And I've used them all. I've loved them all. I've hated them all. And with JBang, you're just not going to need it. And I don't say these for JBang does not replace Maven or Gradle. There's still a use for it. I'm just claiming we should not have to put that in front of everyone to begin with. Right? It should only be there once you start having bigger collaboration or a bigger project or more complicated dependencies. Sure, all these build tools has the value. I'm just saying to get started, no need to add it. And that's my point. So no matter how much I don't want to admit it, JBang is a build tool, but it's also a launcher, it's also a compiler, or rather a wrapper on them. So there are commands to say, hey, I don't necessarily want to run the thing, but I just want to build it, which is useful if you want to put a script, JBang script into a Docker file. You want to build the artifact. You don't want it to build it every time you run it. So it has some use cases. And you can go JBang run xyz.java is the same as JBang xyz.java. So there's a separation, build and run will do a build if necessary. And the big funky thing is you can also we have integrated with GraalVM. So if you go JBang -native and we have GraalVM available, it will turn it into a native file and run it. And that comes with a big disclaimer is that not everything in Java can be GraalVM compiled, but it is there if for some reason if you're just using basic Java and dependencies that are GraalVM ready, you can do that. An advantage of it is, of course, that on the second run, this will start in milliseconds rather than seconds. So yeah, and I talked about the Minecraft thing. So one of the things that Minecraft can do is it's like an app server. You can write extensions that is a jar, and you can put them in. So I'm saying Minecraft here just because it's fun, but this could also be a Tomcat server or app server or whatever it is. And you can write your JBang script, and then when you do export, you get a jar. And then when you run your server, it'll pick it up and all will be good. So JBang can actually operate as a build tool for small things. And for example, a Minecraft plugin or a small little utility of a web client app is easily done in JBang if you want to. The other thing I've done just to show is I have a 6-year-old and we did Mindstorms. I need to figure out how to get Java running on there, JBang running there. And again, because it's just Java, I can take the Java file and export it with all its dependencies and upload it up to Mindstorms, and it just works. So again, just Mindstorms and Minecraft is just gimmicky things, but I just wanted to see how much could I kind of stretch it, and this could apply to anything also. So yeah, but where this all connects to my professional life is Caucus, which is the project I work on. And Caucus is this cloud native framework that lets you has a very interesting approach of doing things at build time, allows you to be native, but it can also just be pure Java. But the cool thing is it's very efficient. And it turns out that JBang plus Caucus is a very nice combination, because I can just literally write microservices with JBang. And all the features that Caucus has about building containers, deploying to OpenShift, hooking into Jib, or all that API is available to you via JBang. And you don't have to have Maven, you don't have to have Gradle, you can just get started. That means with JBang, you can stop at Hello World in the morning, do some Minecraft at lunch, and in the evening or later that week, you can do full-blown microservices, and you still haven't learned about the complexity of all the infrastructure that we tend to have in the Java ecosystem. And yeah.
It seems a really interesting plan as you explain it, no? Like you're starting with something play with, and then continue playing, and then later on you can basically.
Yeah, right. And that's the real cool thing is that I didn't believe this in the beginning. Actually, I was like, no, JBang will just be for scripting and maybe small apps. But then we combined this with Caucus, and not like, by the way, JBang is not depending on Caucus. Caucus not depending on JBang. It's just it's like an extension mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just those two combined, you get a very powerful. Yeah, you can do from basic apps to full-blown apps if you want to.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing is you can the JBang destined native that I said was doing GraalVM by default. But if you have a Caucus dependency on in your JBang file, it will be picked up by JBang and say, "Oh, while I'm doing the build, Caucus, do you want to do anything to this build?" And Caucus goes like, "Sure, I know how to optimize and make this into a native binary, and out comes a native binary." And these are much more successful in general than GraalVM, because what Caucus brings into the mixture is it has all this whole ecosystem of dependencies that is guaranteed to work in native, and therefore you can do much more without having to deal with it. And then the other, which is kind of mind-blowing, is I kind of repeated it before, but I'll just show how to do it. Like if you say -d in this command, which says, during the build of Caucus, please build a container. So now you can literally write your JavaScript, not JavaScript, your JBang script, and now you have a container, and you can deploy that anywhere. And you don't know, like, no Maven, no Gradle, no 6 layers of setup. It's just kind of works. And yeah, some of the stuff is still experimental, but it's there, it works, and we're just kind of expanding on it as we go.
One question, we have 2 questions already. One is about related how, so if JBang is using or can use the local Maven infrastructure, I mean, the repository that we have on the .m2, the settings that we have already.
Yes. Yes. I'll say this: if you find a suggestion that doesn't work, then there's a bug. But yes, so JBang will by default use the local Maven repository to get dependencies on. But you can have a separate one if you want to. I don't have an well, let me show you. If I want to do, if I want to have, yes, if you'll pick up settings XML if you want to, but I can also do repos and say, hey, I want to add JCenter, or I want to add my company's AWS acme.org Nexus to whatever name it is. I can put it in. But we also have a few, like if you want to use the Red Hat product repo or jbus.org, there's like all these shorthands you can do to get external dependencies set up.
Okay. So I understood that by default it's going to get, let's say, the infrastructure that you have already. So it's going to get the knowledge that you have Maven already available. It's going to get the dependencies from there, no?
Yes. Okay. I actually can't remember if I enabled settings XML by default, but it's yeah.
Okay. And another question that we have is that if we can specify which Java version we can use for build and run with JBang.
Yes, I'll get to that in 2 seconds. Just short answers, yes. I'll get a detailed one in a few seconds. And I just want to mention one thing is like JBang works with Java 8 and upwards. Technically, I can also do support for Java 1, but I didn't want to limit myself to that one. So, but Java 8 and upwards, it worked with. So anyway, for Java, my point is that you're not going to need it. I want to keep it simple, and I hate to repeat myself in all these Maven and Gradle setup. And again, I have nothing against them when you start doing more bigger projects, then they definitely have the need. But for a lot of cases, JBang will be enough. Okay, so packaging in Java, the way you do stuff is you code it, you commit it to Git, you build it, you publish it, you ship it. And those are 5 different steps and have various complexities depending on what you do. And then the user has to download Java, install Java, download app, install the app, and run it. And again, some of these things might have been, minimized in some cases, but in general, those are all the steps that are required on the developer side and on the user side. So let's see how this changes when you go through JBang. So first of all, how do you get JBang? You can go to, well, that looks very tiny. But anyway, if you go to JBang Dev, which is the website, you can find, I think we're up to 13 different package managers you can install from. So Scoop for Windows, Chocolate for Windows, Brew for Mac, Snap for Linux in general, Docker, Maven, Gradle plugins. We added a few more lately. I can't forget what they are. Yeah, there's plenty. So if you want to get it, it's very easy. It's available. But if you don't want to use a package manager and you just want to try it and just have a way you can do this all the time, no matter what OS you're on, if you're in a Docker container, if you're on your, your grandparents' laptop or something that doesn't have anything look like Java, there is a command. You just go curl sh JBang dev, run it to BAS, and you can run your Java. So that's like the no install option to do this. And if you are PowerShell users, you can, there's one for that too, if you're on a Windows machine. But by the way, the curl here works in Linux, in OS X, Raspberry Pi, on Windows, if you have Git Bash or MingV or the Windows subsystems. So you can run on basically any platform that can run Java on, that I know of at least. Oh yeah, we got someone added support for IBM AIX and some other weird mainframe computer. So if it can run Java, it can run JBang. Is my claim so far, at least. Someone asked about how do I get Java? Well, JBang itself needs Java, and if you don't have Java, it's going to install a Java 11 from a .OpenJDK. In the background, you'll see it waiting, and that's it. But that's just the mechanics to just get it, bootstrapped. But if you want to use a specific version of Java, you just say JBang, in this case, like --Java 15, and this specific file will be built with a Java 15 compiler and run with a Java 15 runtime. And what JBang does is, if your system already has Java 15 on it, like in the path or Java home, it will use that. So you can always control it, and it'll default to what is your default. But if it doesn't have Java 15, which is the case in the screenshot or this takeout, it will download Java 15 for you and then run it. So you can do that from externally on the command line, or you could have it in the code. So this is an example where I say //Java 14 plus, which means I want 14 or up. If I remove the plus, it's saying I need Java 14. And then those who might remember Java's, well, now records is default in Java 15 or 16, but during Java 14, you have to give options to the compiler. So again, you put it in the file, you say, hey, I want to enable preview release 14, enable preview for the run Java options, and now you have a JBang that works with Java 14 and upwards. And this mechanics of having it inside the file is what makes me claim that I can, unless Java is completely going to be broken in Java 27, as long as they follow these like conventions and standards and flags that have been existing in Java for the last 20 plus years, JBang will work. Right? Here I use a very specific example of records, but you can also set like memory and any kind of performance stuff you want to do. You can put that into your file, and it just kind of is embedded in the file. And if you don't want to, you can also put it in command line. But here it is kind of embedded. Okay, so with JBang, how do you? What's it Java said? Like we have code and publish and test and ship a JBang app. Well, you just create the app, you code away, you commit to it, and let's say you put that on GitHub, and then you can run it. That's it. There's no other step you have to do. I talked about Alias before, but we even got a step further. We can do JBang app install a URL, and that will say, well, hey, there's a my app Java here. We're gonna make my app available on the command line. Sorry, on the path. And you don't see that on in setup. The my app just looks like any other app for you, but behind the scenes it runs JBang, and it's just kind of hide all the complexity for you. So if you're used to using like npm install or pip install to run like small utilities, Java now has that available to you. So if you've been jealous, which I have, on npm having easy ways to provide JavaScript-based CLIs and tools, now you can do that for Java too. Okay, so Java had all these steps to do packaging, code, commit, build, publish, download, etc. In JBang, the world is you code and commit, and on the user side, you just run it. JBang will take care of all those extra steps if they're needed for the user. Okay? And of course, there are different technologies in Java, like JPackage or JLink, the native compile, that kind of thing. The disadvantage is, which is great, by the way. I think it's about time, and we should embrace it. But with JBang, you have a uniform way of doing it from Java 8 to Java N, and yeah, there's no complexity. It's just uniform the whole way. I do plan on adding support for JLink and those things if I find a way. But right now I haven't had the need for it because it's fairly simple. So yeah. So one example is you can just do this command like curl and then run the URL. And again, you don't have to do anything beyond that as a user. And if you want to, you can, instead of this is just running it, and if you want to install it, you can, and then after that, you refer to it as your app, and all is good.
There are two questions already related with, well, at least one with packaging, which is one is related with Docker images and how it's basically done. So basically, it relies on Docker or any runtime to create Docker images, or well, so JBang doesn't know anything about it. That's a Caucus feature that JBang enables. So in the case of Caucus, you have multiple ways of doing it, but the simplest one is Caucus can use JIP, which is this pure Java thing to build containers. So you don't have to have Docker installed on your machine to build a container, but you have to have Docker to run it, or Podman or that kind of thing. So, okay. And the other one is related, really similar to Quarkus. Is basically this the -- native that you use is basically is using the same approach as Quarkus, downloading the current latest raw VM image.
Yes. It's literally just using Caucus. Like there's no magic here. It's just those two gets coupled, and then all the powers Caucus has, JBang now has access to.
And the last question that I have is that this install that you've been doing, let's say in that way, basically it doesn't matter that the computer has been, I mean, because basically if I'm going to let's say a mainframe or a Unix system or any Windows system, basically it's going to be installed no matter the operative system, and basically it's going to be executed as a native one, or it's basically a kind of a wrapper of the jar file that JBang already created?
Depends on the situation. So if you run where do we have it? Where's the line? So just to make sure we talk about the same thing. So if you do this JBang -- native Caucus REST, it's gonna use your well, the problem is you can do all of them, but if you do that on a machine and there's nothing else, it will run Graal. Graal VM has to be available on your machine. I haven't added download of Graal yet, but we should in the future. But it'll run. So if you run this on a Windows machine, it'll produce a native Windows binary.
Okay.
And if you run on Linux, be Linux, and etc. And of course, this is not going to be fast. The first build is going to take some time, but you can do the runs afterwards. But for example, if you put that into a Docker build, it will build like Graal VM or Mandrill in that container. Oh, sorry, it'll use Mandrill or Graal, build a native binary that then is in your Docker container, and all is good. So again, this is a thing that that JBang doesn't do anything you can't do without all this other stuff. It's just JBang just removes all the complexity to get there, so to speak. And then Caucus helps on the extra mile. But
yep.
Yeah. Okay. How far did we get? We got to package install. Yes. So all these things again, just to kind of hit the point home, is I can run, I can build, or JBang can run and build anything. But there's this concept of aliases and catalogs. I've kind of got around and told to people, and some of them have picked it up. So if you go and do JBang run at JRuby, actually, let me just do that. I haven't done that in a while. So if I do JBang run at JRuby, yeah. So this is JBang at, no, that's not true. Is that the one? Yeah. You'll see it's actually fetching these dependencies, which is a fairly big one, and then it prints out max. So if my Ruby is not good. Talking joke. Okay. You see, it doesn't run again. It runs JRuby, which take a few seconds, and there. So now I'm using JBang to run this thing, but I didn't have it installed. That's why it went and downloaded this thing. And this is actually, let me see if that's propped up here. Whoop. This is actually a catalog on JRuby JBang catalog that says that the alias run should refer to this dependency. Okay. And that, oops, that's fine. Here we go. I lost my back button. Where'd my backup button go? Why does it always happen? There we go. Voila. Sorry about that. So the point is that you can have these catalogs, you can have anywhere, and JBang will just figure it out. So examples is the JRuby one. In Caucus, we have this the CLI. I wrote gap search is a utility to search the memory repository for dependency. And instead of remembering like long dependencies and names, it's just JBang gap search at jbang.dev. Okay. I can alias them and install them as I want, but these are like a simple naming system to refer to anything on like in the broader developer ecosystem, GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket and that kind of thing. Okay. So the sort of highlights. So for the learning, JBang makes it easy to get started. You can explore any API. Like since I got JBang, any time I hear about a new API, a new Java library, or something I haven't tried out before, I just go find out dependency and take the first and best example I can find in the doc and put it in a Java file and run it. No extra setup. I can just focus on the code. There's nothing there. I can run anything: scripts, Java, jar, JShell, any Maven artifact, GitHub. It's wherever it is, you can refer to it. Build, just use Java with JBang, then you don't have to learn that extra complexity. But I want to point out that moving from a JBang to a Maven or a Gradle is easy, because any JBang project is literally just some Java files and a compile command. And those are easy to do in Maven and Gradle, right? So it's easy to migrate the project. And the whole packaging is just code, commit, and run, and all is there. We're running out of time, but there's just things I know we haven't covered. But just so, if you want to use Java File Recorder or class data sharing or wrappers or JBang as a JDK management tool like SDKman or Continuous Port, or using, you can write Java agents in this too. It's all there. There's a whole other dimension that I can't cover in the time. And one thing I often get is like, when is 1.0? Because it's been 1.5 years, and I'm on release 70 now, 070, and had about 150 releases. At some point, release once every 2 or 3 days. Now it's about once every 2 or 3 weeks. Not because we're changing a lot, but we're just kind of improving. And last time I did a similar presentation, I said that, well, I wanted to have a way to, just like I can run anything from any GitHub repository, I want to be able to have templates. So I can say, hey, if you run this, I will set up a product for you, or an example to get going. And the other thing, so here I do Caucus IO. You can imagine like Spring IO having like tutorial 1, tutorial 2, or Hibernate, or anything like, or your own project can do this. I want to do the caching a bit better. So by the way, when you run, you don't see the class files and the jar files. They're all handled by JBang's internal caching. And I do want to get that a little bit faster before the 1.0, but maybe that's just me being a bit pedantic. So the other one that's been a big problem is supporting POM, what's called in Maven BOM POMs, or dependency management POMs, or what's called platform imports in Gradle. Because again, in the beginning, who care? Like, I'm just using a few dependencies. But when you start using Caucus or Spring or like Java EE dependencies, suddenly you want to have that there. So that was the important thing for me to kind of do, because as soon as you want to do a bit more than just basics, then you want to have that. And I want to be able to publish my apps to Maven Central or somewhere else. And yeah, when I did this, I realized I'm just missing one. So I hope a 1.0 will be there soon. So the top one is actually a command you can run now, and that will set up a GitHub bot using Caucus in a few files, and you can just get going and develop on that application. And the BOM support is just there since a few months. And to publish my app ended up actually being not something I did, but Andres Almer, I can't pronounce the names, Almere, he saw all the different ways I'd done the packaging and publishing in JBang, and he codified it. So he did this thing called JReleaser. So you can actually use JReleaser with JBang to publish things. Yeah. So it's getting there. So there'll be a 1.0 soon. So anyway, I feel like Java has a massive ecosystem. It's very good, and I think it's very much underappreciated. But with JBang, I feel it becomes much easier to get started with, and I hope you guys will try it. And if you want to help on this, my biggest issue is actually to get the message out. So anything you can talk about JBang and make it people aware will help me. If you want to do a JBang catalog with your favorite little Java utilities, do that or contribute a thing. But the biggest hurdle I've had in explaining JBang to people is, people with N years of Java experience think like, no, why? I just use main and Gradle, it's easy. But I promise you, if you try it out, you'll realize there's a lot of stuff you don't need all that complexity for. So I really want to get that out there, because I don't want to see 3, 4, 5 pages of documentation on how you get your product set up to try out a new API. I want any student or any experienced developer just to go, oh, I can just copy this file or run this gist and get started. Nothing else. Right? So yeah, if you want to help, make the tweet, Facebook, mail, give it to your colleagues, whatever you have about it. And yeah, and JBang is, I created it originally, but there's been a lot of contributors who've done a lot of examples and fixes and improvements, especially Taco, who I think is somewhere in Spain these days. Yeah, he's done a lot of stuff like the automating of JBang and Java and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely been a community project. And yeah, any questions left, basically.
Lovely, thank you, Max. I think it has been really interesting to see how, I would say, easy is to try a lot of things with JBang. At the end, it's like reducing the complexity, and just doing everything you want in a simple way. So, which is completely great. So thank you. I have to say that I was expecting something really, I would say, simple, but it's really complex at the end. Make it the things even simpler.
Well, yeah, let's not call it complex. It's very what's the word? It enables a lot of things. It's more complete. It's not a set. Yeah.
So I have a few questions here for you, and one is that well, it's related with this thing. It's basically then JBang is not just for scripting, right?
Yeah, that's the many people that that comes to me, and they think JBang is just for scripting because that's how it was announced, and I talked about it for a while. But over time, it's literally you can do anything from a script to a little utility to a full-blown, REST service or that kind of thing. At some point, it gets too complicated to, once you start doing all crazy stuff, you might want to use a bit more, but you can write, there's a lot of stuff, especially in this whole world of microservices. The whole point is to have small independent projects, and I'll argue a lot of those could just be JBang applications if you wanted to. So yeah.
I have a few more questions. One is related this with which kind of use cases you think are, let's say, they suit for JBang, right? Because
yeah. So one of the things we have the JBang dev tweet and a Twitter account, and I when I find an interesting JBang sighting, as I call them, I tweet them out. And some of the ones I've done over the years is so Microsoft recently announced this new new utility for doing streaming of JFR, and their basic sample is actually, hey, here's the JBang command to try this library out. So that's one thing, just using it for library demo and testing. The other one is, which we've done internally in Caucus, like one of the reasons I started on JBang, we had a lot of Kscript. So Kscript is Kotlin scripting. And I looked at that code, I was like, this doesn't do anything Java couldn't do. So we had a lot of Kotlin in there, and it was kind of annoying because Kotlin isn't like our expertise, and it was an extra dependency. So we simplified our life by actually turning those scripts. These are like automation of GitHub Actions and Jenkins. We added those in. So that's one thing, just as small scripts. The whole catalog mechanism you can put inside a project. So you could, let me see, where's my terminal? So you can actually do, you could have a catalog in your file, and you can just say, set up project or do some command. You could encode that as JBang scripts. So instead of having to figure out how to write a plugin for Maven or plugin for Gradle, you can write some of those things as JBang scripts. The there's a whole tutorial part. There's crazy things like, I haven't seen anyone do this, but I've implemented just to show that you can. If you want our JFX, so this is I'm running a command. It should pop up some point. Let's see where it comes. Where's my screen? Oh, it's there. Let me just get it out. It's on a different screen share. And where's my screen? Here is now a JavaFX app written in JBang. And that code is, whoops, where's my keyboard doesn't work. Great. Anyway, my point is that anything you can do in Java, you can use JBang for. There's the whole thing about making like JRuby and the Groovy product, and there's a few macro languages out there. They, instead of telling people to download Java and run this thing, they can just give it a link to JBang alias,
yeah,
and things work. Yeah.
And the last question that I have is that I think apparently that it will, make the barrier really, let's say, remove from starting to use Java, because at the end it's like all the things are going to be really, let's say, easy for starting with.
Yeah.
And then you think it's, or do you know, is there any particular initiative where it's used in education? I mean, because apparently,
yeah,
starting
yeah.
with...
So I have so for example, the whole the Mindstorm idea actually came from, I forgot his name now, just went blank. But he said he's using JBang for some of his schooling in demoing Spring Boot. I'm working with, I have a contact with a university in Greece who is planning on trying to use JBang in the next early start of students for Java. And I just got a few pings on Twitter saying they will try to look into it. But definitely, if anyone is in trying to apply this to education, I'm all ears and helping out, because literally all the features I've shown here has been built out for. I'm a newbie of Java. Like, can I just remove all the overhead? And then it turns out that when you remove all the overhead, that also becomes useful for the an expert. But yeah, no, definitely. If anyone is here and want to do that, like, ping me. I'll happily help.
Cool. So I think we don't have more questions. No. So I think we can end up here. So thank you very much for all of us for attending the event. And I hope all of you are, say, safe and healthy. And I hope to see all of you